Have you ever thought of the Talmud as a detective story? Seriously, it's not just a big book of laws. It's more like a record of these incredible, rigorous, logical investigations. So today, we're not just looking for answers. We're going to play detective. We're going to follow the clues and see exactly how the Talmud thinks. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so our whole investigation kicks off with this simple, almost paradoxical question. When is a perfectly valid act just not a good idea? I mean, think about it. You do something that's technically correct, totally by the book, but at the same time, it's just wrong. This is the exact kind of puzzle the Talmud loves to sink its teeth into, and it all starts with what seems like a really straightforward rule. All right, so here's our first piece of evidence. It's a simple Mishnah, from the foundational text of rabbinic law. And it seems pretty clear, right? It says, one who slaughters at night, his slaughter is valid. Same goes for a blind person. The act is totally valid. The meat's kosher. Seems like case closed. But is it? Well, of course not, because then the mystery deepens with another clue. See, the original Mishnah's phrasing, one who slaughters, it's subtle, but it implies that, yeah, it's valid after the fact, what we call diavad, but maybe you shouldn't have done it in the first place. But then, another source from the same time, a breira, comes along and says, one may always slaughter at night. That sounds totally fine from the start, or lechatchila. So what gives? We have a direct conflict. And here is the Talmud's brilliant solution. It's actually not a contradiction at all. It's just about context. It's all about the lighting. That source saying it's always okay, it assumes you've got a torch, plenty of light to see what you're doing. But our first Mishnah, the one that sounds a bit hesitant, well, that's talking about slaughtering in the dark. That's why it's mentioned right next to the case of a blind person. It's not ideal, for sure, but if it happens, it's still valid. A really neat, tidy solution, right? But believe me, that was just the warm-up. Our real investigation is just getting started. All right, that first puzzle was just the warm-up. Now we're raising the stakes. A lot. We're talking about a forbidden feast. We're moving from a simple procedural question to an act that, well, it carries the death penalty. So get this. The new case is slaughtering an animal on Shabbat. This is a huge deal, a major transgression, a capital offense. And yet, the Mishnah says the slaughter itself is technically valid. The animal is properly slaughtered. This is just a shocking paradox. How can an act be both a capital crime and a perfectly valid procedure at the exact same time? Now this is where the real detective work begins. And then, a sage named Rav Huna drops a crucial clue into the mix. He says that even though the slaughter is technically valid, you're forbidden from eating the meat on that Shabbat. Okay, now we have a genuine whodunit on our hands. If the animal was slaughtered correctly, why on earth is the meat forbidden? The sages in the academy, they immediately have a prime suspect in mind. So their first hypothesis, their first theory, is that this ruling has to be the opinion of one particular scholar, Rabbi Yehuda. Now why him? Because he's known for this very specific way of thinking, a logical principle that just might unlock this entire puzzle. The hunt is on. Okay, so the sages are chasing their first lead, and it all has to do with a core concept of Shabbat, the logic of preparation. Basically, what was ready and set for the holy day before it even began. And this brings us to a super important term, muktzah. It literally means set aside. Basically, it's anything that wasn't mentally prepared or designated for use before Shabbat rolled in. Think of it like this. Friday afternoon, you lay out your nice clothes for services. They're prepared. But the hammer and nails in your garage? Nope, not so much. They're muktzah. So a sage named Rabbi Abba makes the connection. He argues, following what he thinks is Rabbi Yehuda's logic, that, hey, when Shabbat began, this animal was a live animal. It wasn't prepared as food. So when it suddenly becomes meat during Shabbat, it's considered mukteh, and you can't use it. Seems like a pretty solid theory, right? But then another brilliant sage, Abaye, jumps in and hits the brakes. He's like, hold on a second. Are these cases really comparable? He points out that in a normal muktzah situation, something might go from being for a person to being, say, for a dog. But here, the animal was for a person before it was slaughtered, and the meat is for a person after. Its basic designation hasn't really changed. But Rabbi Abba throws a total curveball. He comes back and says, is a live animal really designated for eating? No. He argues its primary designation is for breeding. The fact that it could become food is only secondary. This just completely reframes the whole problem, but it also creates a brand new one. I mean, if an animal is mainly for breeding, how could we ever slaughter one on a festival, a day when cooking is permitted? Well, to solve that problem, Rabbi Abba has to pull out one of the most fascinating, most mind-bending concepts in all of Talmudic logic. So buckle up, because we are about to talk about retroactive reality. The concept is called breira, which means retroactive designation. It's this wild idea that an event happening now, in the present, can actually reach back in time and clarify the status of something in the past. It basically decides what something was all along. And this is the absolute linchpin that holds Rabbi Abba's entire theory about Rabbi Yehuda together. Okay, the best way to get your head around this is with a modern analogy, a lottery ticket. So you buy a ticket. Before the numbers are drawn, what is it? It's undetermined, right? It could be a winner, could be a loser. But then the numbers are drawn. That's the clarifying event. And you win. At that moment, we can say retroactively that your ticket was always a winning ticket from the second you bought it. The future clarified the past. And that's exactly what Rabbi Abba is arguing for our animal. If you end up slaughtering it, well, it becomes clear that it was always designated for food. If you don't, it was always for breeding. So this right here, this is the moment of truth for the whole theory. Everything, the entire explanation, hinges on whether our prime suspect, Rabbi Yehuda, actually accepts this principle of breira. Because if he doesn't, the entire logical chain just completely falls apart. The sages have to figure it out, one way or the other. And so, the sages essentially put their own theory on trial. They have to solve this unresolved puzzle. They start to meticulously comb through other rulings from Rabbi Yehuda, looking for any shred of evidence about his position on breira. Their investigation brings up two key pieces of evidence. First, there's the case of the tithed wine. Now, at first glance, it really looks like Rabbi Yehuda rejects breira, but when the sages dig deeper, they realize his problem isn't with the theory itself. It's a practical one. He's worried the wineskin might burst. So that's a red herring. But then they find it, the case of the Shabbat boundary. And here, Rabbi Yehuda explicitly forbids a choice-based designation that relies on the future. This is the smoking gun. It's definitive proof. Rabbi Yehuda does not accept the principle of breira. And just like that, the entire theory collapses. After that long, complex, brilliant chain of reasoning, the sages' own hypothesis is shattered. The lead has gone completely cold. Their prime suspect, Rabbi Yehuda, has been cleared. So let's just quickly recap this broken logical chain. Remember, the idea was that the forbidden meat was explained by Rabbi Yehuda's view on muktzeh, on things not being prepared. But for that to work with a live animal, it absolutely needed the mind-bending logic of breira. But the sages just proved, definitively, that Rabbi Yehuda does not accept breira. Therefore, the initial theory is just wrong. So, after all that, we're left right back where we started. If retroactive logic is out, why is the meat forbidden? And after following this incredible detective story with all its twists and turns and dead ends, the Talmud, well, it leaves the puzzle open. It doesn't give us the final answer. And maybe that's the whole point. It teaches us that the real value isn't always in finding a simple solution, but in the relentless, the honest, and the absolutely brilliant process of asking the questions.